What is up, Charles here, and thank you for being back on my channel as well. I appreciate you for taking the time to check out my content. So what I want to do today is I want to introduce my podcast because I decided to put my own podcast out there. I'm not 100% sure how frequent I will put out these episodes, but I just know that I love to do that, and I know that I have access to a lot of great and amazing people. So if you would like to see someone specific on my podcast, let me know in the comments. If you would like to see a specific episode or a specific topic on my channel, on my podcast, let me know as well. I'm always open for suggestions. So what I thought about is I want to put podcasts on my YouTube channel and videos that I'm filming myself. So I want to have both on my channel. So also let me know if this is a good idea, what you think about that. I'm always open for constructive criticism. I'm always open for suggestions. Don't be shy to comment. Like, I even like the bad comments, quote unquote, because at least they're funny. So I love the haters, I love everyone. So thanks so much for checking in, guys, and without any further ado, let's dive into the first episode. So hello and welcome to the first episode of my podcast. I'm here with Adam McDonald because I decided to share a lot of valuable information about topics like nutrition, fitness, how to change your body composition, how to lose fat, all the good stuff. And I thought that the first episode would be perfect with Adam because I've never met him in real life so far, but we are like friends on Facebook and social media. I guess it's like 3 years, and I've seen a lot of his content that he shares. And he's one of the only guys that shares really like science-based and evidence-based top topics and content. So I was like, okay, I need to have him here on for one episode because I know he and also me, we can help a lot of guys by just sharing our expertise and knowledge. So what I wanted to ask you as the first question, first, like, what's your background? What are you doing right now? And then also secondly, what's your blueprint for guys that want to lose fat, especially right now for summer, like in the next 3 months? What's like your basic blueprint? And then we can just go on from there.
All right. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. And I actually did see you like 3 years ago in person. I remember it was at FIBO in Germany at the expo, but you were like way ahead of me and you were working, I remember. So we were,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
we were supposed to meet, but you were like, I don't know, way at the top of the queue and I was like at the back and then I didn't see you after that. So I know that you were
Crazy, dude.
busy, but yeah, but so thanks for having me on. And basically I've been coaching guys in person and online for a couple of years. I don't do the in person anymore. So I basically just got into it through having my own online coach. So I'm 27 now and I've had an online coach or a coach, I'll say a mentor kind of ever since I was like 19 or so. So not all good. When I was 19, I was living in Toronto and I was really big fan of bodybuilding. And I went to my first bodybuilding show, IFBB Pro show, Toronto Pro, and social media wasn't really that big back then. There was Facebook and everybody used Facebook, but there wasn't Instagram or any of that stuff. And it
Great.
wasn't as easily accessible to like YouTube videos were not as good. The only fitness guy you really had was like Scott Herman Fitness, or maybe like Rob Riches or a few other guys. And I spent a lot of time on the Muscular Development Forums, which is like a bodybuilding website. It's still going, but I don't think the forums are even active anymore. I had a look at them recently to try and find some old photos because I used to, upload my progress pictures and get advice. But ultimately what happened was I was chatting to some guys and one guy started to coach me, and I decided then that I wanted to do like my first bulk under the guidance of like a coach. He was just like some bodybuilder guy who I met online who was like, posted a lot. And I followed a kind of plan for a couple of months when I was living in Toronto there. And then at the end of that summer, I had I had the option, or I had the opportunity to go and do like a fitness model photo shoot in London, where it was like a workshop because I wanted to be a fitness model, even though that's not really a job, but like that's what I wanted to be, a fitness model. So I dieted for like 8 weeks or so, and I ate pretty much the same foods every single day. I had this guidance from this guy, and even though I knew a little bit more about nutrition in terms of calories and stuff, whatever, I just followed this plan for eight or so weeks, and I got down relatively lean, did a photo shoot, and after that, then I kind of my interest kind of snowballed into, more into the kind of bodybuilding and understanding nutrition. And I had a few coaches from there. Again, the next one I think I found again online. I had him for a couple of months. And then after, about a year later when I was 20, that's when I came across this guy called Connor Lavelli. He's a pro natural bodybuilder. So he was a client of Lane Norton, who most people will know as the bodybuilding. He's kind of the anti-bro science guy. And I liked his approach. I'd been following him for a couple of years. And it's when I kind of was like enlightened about the natural bodybuilding. So like, I kind of was lucky that early on, my expectations were set in terms of what could be achieved naturally and unnaturally. So I've been training since I was like 16, and I kind of started training with him or under his guidance, and I learned a lot about nutrition and just kind of basic email support from a coach. But then, over the years, when I was 21, then I decided that I really wanted to compete, and I always had that in the back of my mind ever since I got to bodybuilding or introduced that I wanted to compete. And but I just never felt I had the size, or it wasn't big enough to do bodybuilding. And I liked it when the idea of men's physique came around. That was like something that like really was like, that's what I wanted to look like. I wanted to have that natural look where you're not overly muscled and you're like a freak, but you're like very aesthetically pleasing, quite a bit of muscle. And eventually I did my first competition when I was 21. And then after that, I took some time off. I didn't take time off from the gym. I took time off from competing and hooked up with a company called 3D 3D Muscle Journey, who I'm actually still coached by. So I did another competition then in 2016, which was my second one. So 3 years later. And then this year I'm going to do my third competition, which will be the bodybuilding show in Sacramento, California. So that's a natural bodybuilding. It's actually my first natural bodybuilding show. The other two were fitness model shows, so they were never actually drug tested. So this one is a drug tested show. So, I just have a better playing field in terms of, I will be at least similar size to the other guys, and they're not going to be absolutely jacked. And over the years, I just kind of got interest, people asking me to coach them through sharing my story, through sharing content and knowledge, because this is what I'm passionate about. And I took on my first client in, I think, about 3 years ago online, and kind of failed a bit at the start of that. Had really no idea what to do. Just kind of copied what I was being told or being taught through my coaches. Had some wins and some losses, and then took on a few more clients. And through my knowledge, I got some other clients that you were just following me, and they were kind of higher up in the industry or had more kind of light on them. And then I got more clients through that. And then I set up my gym with two others back in 2016, end of 2016. 2017, I set up a gym, ran that for like 1.5 years, but ultimately that wasn't really what I liked. So you have to kind of train the people that are in your area. And when you own a physical gym, people aren't going to come like hours to drive to train with you. At least with the status that I had, I wasn't some guru at the time. So I trained the local people, whoever pretty much would pay me money at the time. And it wasn't really enjoyable. I was working like shift hours up very, very early in work, very, very late, working in the gym 6 days a week, but most likely working 7 days. One day I would be working on other systems and stuff. And it wasn't something that I enjoyed. And ultimately I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. Now I just do only online clients. And that's pretty much where I am today. So that's in terms of my background. I also have worked in technology companies. So when I left college first, when I was 22 or 3, started working in Microsoft, started working in that industry and worked there for a couple of years. And for a while, I actually did both, working in the gym and working online, or working in the gym and working in, the corporate industry as well. So that was really tough. So I understand that kind of aspect of what it's like to work in the gym, and then what's like to work in the corporate world. We have targets and stress and the kind of life that can happen in terms of, targets that you need to meet, long hours, needing to travel for work a lot, but then also like, understanding that you can still get into great shape. So I try and help and spread that message. So the kind of guys that I work with is like similar guys to that aspect, who be like entrepreneurs who have all the time in the world, or they're not necessarily like, dads or whatever, but they're kind of guys who are in that corporate world on the kind of coming up the ladder. The career is very important to them, but also so is social life and training as well. So the approach that I take is trying to get the maximum from the minimum. So I don't have guys doing like six day programs or having to track every single calorie. And that's the kind of approach that I take, trying to get the 80-20 principle, where they're focusing on, the 20% that's really important to get them the 80% of the results, rather than trying to turn them into bodybuilders. Because I don't really work with bodybuilders, even though I have helped people, and I do sometimes help people contest prep. Most of the time, it's not that kind of people. It's people who just want to look really good, but also have like other priorities in life.
Perfect. So regarding you, what is like the 2080 of like losing body fat long term?
Well, something that I've really kind of started to change over the last few years is that like I really focus on their health. So I suppose that was through my own kind of experience and journey, is that when I started to neglect health, and it's not that, I think from my own perspective that when you lose body fat, most of your health issues are solved. So I really don't agree with any kind of, if somebody's overweight and you're trying to manipulate hormones or manipulate certain foods to try and get their health better, I think, the number one thing is to just get into a healthy body weight. Then most things are going to sort themselves out in terms of if you have any issues with cholesterol or blood pressure or fitness or insulin sensitivity. All of these things, even sleep, they start to sort themselves out when you do get into healthy body fat. So regardless of how you actually get into that body fat, they're going to sort themselves out. So that's the number one thing that I do look at, is making sure that guys, get lean first before they start to actually trying to, do anything crazy in terms of food or anything like that, or, manipulation of training. So just get lean first, or at least get into a body fat level that they feel healthy and good at. So there could be anywhere from 8% body fat to 16% body fat, depending on the person and how they feel. And then I'll look at stuff like sleep, making sure that they, eating enough fruits and vegetables. So I'll get guys tracking them. And I don't mean tracking like in terms of, weighing every single ounce. In fact, they don't get guys to track vegetables for the most part. It's different if you're going to be like a contest prep, that does become important towards the end. But for the most part, because often people don't like fruits and vegetables, or they prefer to eat other foods. And when you give someone a certain set of calories or macronutrient targets, they'll try and fill that with foods that, they really enjoy the taste of. And often that means that they'll negate fruits and vegetables. And we know from a lot of studies that, or at least a few studies, that all-cause mortality, can't even pronounce that, is decreased, or decreased in compared to people who don't eat fruits and vegetables, or even people who just take a multivitamin. So there's a lot of properties in plants, fruits and vegetables, that we probably don't know about right now. Even like all the research probably still don't know about, that can probably work in synergistic ways together, and also a lot of phytonutrients. So those phytonutrients or phytochemicals, whatever you want to call them, that are like non-essential nutrients that it's very difficult to get in pill form or even powder form, that just, I think there's over 25,000 of them, that, and probably more that we don't know about, that are in fruits and vegetables, that can be having a positive effect on our health that we don't know. So, I'm not one of these holistic kind of, yoga gurus that thinks that, you should just, I don't know, smoke weed and then just do all this crazy shit. But there's no negative downsides to, eating fruits and vegetables. So I get guys to track that. So by just trying to track that, by asking them on a daily basis through a tracker, have they eaten 6+ servings of fruits and vegetables? Have they eaten 8+ servings of fruits and vegetables? Trying to get them up to that, and then not really tracking that unless it's like, potatoes or bananas or some starchy ones. So that's getting them into good habits first, because most people don't have good eating habits, and in trying to get them to track every single macronutrient of fruits and vegetables, like the first thing is get them eating fruits and vegetables, and then basically focusing on sleep. So making sure that they have a good environment in terms of setting up their sleep. So there's multiple things in terms of yeah, exactly. So light therapy, I actually don't have those type of classes, but I do have like classes that are opposite, where they're like blue light therapy. So like they would block out blue light, but also you can have blue light classes that actually do the opposite. So they put blue light into you. So in the winter, that's extremely important, because you don't get enough light, and especially if you're working in like an office or inside. And we know that blue light that comes into your eye, it affects your suprachiasmatic nucleus, and then in turn affects your circadian rhythms, which is basically your body's clock, your night and day clock. So if you have messed up, body clock, your body's not producing melatonin properly, and it's not clearing it properly. So you could be tired in the morning from residual melatonin, and then also you could be not sleepy at nighttime because you're not producing melatonin effectively. So that becomes, a nightmare, sleepy during the day and not sleepy at nighttime. And then your sleep is messed up, and sleep can make you, although sleep doesn't technically affect fat loss, because we know it's just calories in versus calories out regardless. But sleep does affect the calories in versus calories out. So by a roundabout way, it does affect it, because, you can be, one, you're just more tired when you're not fully slept, but also your inhibition kind of goes out the window. So like a lot of people that will go out and party, even if they don't drink alcohol, they'll make poor food choices the next day simply because they just don't have much discipline. And, I noticed that myself. I go out and I'm really tired, and I wouldn't have even drank any alcohol, but just make bad food choices. So not only does it make you make bad food choices, but also choices in every area of life. Also have poor insulin sensitivity, but it's not necessarily something I track, but it's something that's noteworthy. But also, you can reduce your testosterone by up to 30% if you're sleep deprived, multiple nights. And really, what sleep deprivation doesn't necessarily mean that you're not sleeping at all or you have insomnia. So I actually interviewed Dr. Greg Potter recently myself on my channel, and he's a sleep researcher from the University of Leeds. And I asked him this question: what is sleep deprivation? And he just said pretty much, if you're underslept, that's, deprived. There's a difference between like no sleep and sleep deprivation. So even if you have like say 5.5 hours or 6.5 hours of sleep and you need 8, that's technically sleep deprivation. So if you have that multiple days in a row, that can lead to, up to 30% decrease in testosterone. So by just getting your sleep in line, you're just feeling better mentally and physically, and then you're making better food choices. So by sorting those things out first, making sure people eat fruit and vegetables, making sure their sleep is right. Also trying them to manage stress, because stress can also affect things like your digestion. A lot of people eating too fast, or if you're in a chronic state of stress, it can affect your fat loss through just higher cortisol levels. Again, you're eating because you're higher stressed. A lot of people emotionally eat. If you're stressed a lot, you'll just tend to eat more. And then just overall just feeling better. So stuff like just meditation or even journaling. Not everybody likes to do it, but it does help. And then also a wind down routine. And that is included in the kind of sleep as well. So like, less blue light in the evenings, some sort of relaxation techniques in the evenings, whether that's just, meditation, which I personally like to do when I'm going to sleep, or using stuff like lavender oil in the room with a humidifier. Even like the stuff like the blue light blocking glasses that you use. I don't personally use them. I just use apps, but I just try and set myself a rule of no technology after 9 at least. Doesn't always happen. Probably very rarely happens because I'm always just very busy. But that's some of the things that I started to do. And of course, then I started teaching about like, macronutrients and calories and all of these things, and basically getting them the basics and looking at the big picture. And because obviously calories are important. So it's not just, eat as much fruits and vegetables as you want and get your sleep when you lose fat. But there's the first things that are important, because I think you can diet down and feel like crap and lose body fat, or you can diet down and feel pretty good. And a lot of people actually don't eat that much food, but they can't lose body fat. And it's not that their metabolism is messed up or anything like that, because we know that through that, Minnesota starvation study, that it's 15% maximum, I think, that your body can,
in the worst case.
Yeah, in the worst case scenario. And at that point, you're eating your own fingers. But yes. But I mean, so it's not metabolism messed up. And I hate when people kind of say like boost your metabolism, but the more food that you can give somebody, and the better you get them, more rested, and the more energy that they feel, they can eat more food and still burn more fat. And it's not that they're eating, the calorie surplus doesn't change because they have more energy, they're eating more food, they're moving around more, their training is better. So in turn, they're actually then burning more calories and creating a deficit. So that's how people can actually, how I get people eating more food and actually losing more weight. It's not like some magic that some people sell where, you eat more food and then you burn more calories because your metabolism is now on fire. It's not true. It's just, we know it's just not true. It's like you eat more calories and you eat better quality food. You're not as deficient. So, even if you're eating enough calories and you're micronutrient deficient, you're not going to have enough energy. So, eat better quality food. You have no nutritional deficiencies. You still can be in a deficit and have no deficiencies in terms of micronutrients. You'll have more energy, and then in turn that means you'll move more, and then you'll burn more calories. So that means you don't have to keep eating less and less and less. And that's a problem with a lot of people, is that they want to lose fat first, and they're already in bad kind of shape, maybe skinny fat, or don't really work out much. They don't move a lot. They're like almost like sloths on a couch. They just go to the office, and then they can't even imagine eating less. They're like, what? I don't eat that much food at all. How can I eat less? How am I not losing weight? And it's because they actually need to kind of change around. So that's the approach that I take in terms of nutrition. And then in training, it's very basic. I don't put guys on more than 4 hours of training per week usually. I personally only do 4 hours per week. Sometimes I'll do 5, but I'm pretty busy a lot. So I'll do like a 5-day split myself sometimes, or maybe even 4-day, but I'll usually spread that across maybe 8 days or so. So I think it's just my volume is quite low in training, not extremely low, but it's low enough. And I think it's just the importance of getting progressive overload, So most people are like in that intermediate phase. They're not advanced bodybuilders where they need extreme, progression techniques or intensity techniques to progress. It's just about good form and focusing on the big picture and progression over their lifting career, not necessarily progression week to week. So that's one of the things I kind of hammer home as well, is that people, they think they need to, they learn about progressive overload, and then they think that means they need to progress every single week. But that's obviously not possible, because then they'll be, everybody will be deadlifting 300 kilos after 1 year of training. So, looking at, times to push, times not to push, and then understanding that, there's always going to be times where people go on holidays, people get sick, and, just looking at those as like kind of periods of deload. So with a lot of people, or like with advanced athletes, you'll often hear deloads, and using periods of deloading to kind of give yourself a mental and physical break from training, or just using lighter intensities or lighter loads. But personally for me, I just think that because people, just life happens, and especially when people travel and they'll have events on and stuff, I'll use those periods as kind of deloads. So that's the kind of overall philosophy that I have with nutrition. So I do follow like a flexible approach with people. I let them, I do think that flexible dieting is a lot more important than like following specific foods or meal plans. Like I never write meal plans for everybody, because they just don't follow them. I mean, I've tried to follow meal plans myself in the past, and I've never followed them. You just can't stick to it. You end up binging, and then you feel bad about yourself because you fall off it. And that's the worst thing. It's not necessarily to eat more calories, because you're going to eat more calories. Sometimes you're hungry or whatever. But if you have this like meal plan or something that's very structured or rigid, and you start to feel bad about yourself when you fall off that, or, you fall off the plan, or you eat something that's not on it, and then you binge, and then you start to have like, you self-doubt, you have self-deprecation, you feel ashamed. Like I've felt all of these things, and that's not healthy for a relationship with food. And ultimately what I'm trying to do is, help people with long-term changes and have, good eating habits for not just overall physical appearance, but that is extremely important for the guys that I work with, but also health, so that they're feeling good, and that, in long into their career, they can have these understanding of nutrition. I think that's the fundamental thing, is understanding nutrition, because you can follow a certain plan or a way of eating or dieting for a period of time, and you can get great results. But if you don't understand the fundamentals, when you stop doing that approach, or you go out to eat, or you go on holidays, or you're much, much older and you no longer kind of want to follow this plan, you don't understand the fundamentals, then you won't know what to do, and you just fall back to your old habits. So understanding the kind of, everything around nutrition, and not like so in depth about all, necessarily all like energy, metabolism, and all these things, but understanding the fundamentals of calories in versus calories out, proteins, carbs, and fats, and understanding micronutrients, phytonutrients, and all of these things is important. So that's the kind of overall, philosophy in a very long-winded explanation.
Yeah, perfect, dude. I love it. You could already like end the podcast here, like such a good summary. That's the reason why I wanted to have you here, because also when I work with most of my clients, all of my clients are really health conscious, but a lot of them still have a lot of body fat, and then they tell me like, yeah, but I don't want to eat fish because of the mercury and the toxins. And I'm like, dude, if you lose your body fat, that's the one thing you need to do for your health. Everything else is just minutia. If it's gluten or not
Yeah.
gluten, if you're not gluten intolerant. So I really like that you focus on like the basic stuff, and then the rest is just mostly also marketing stuff. I mean, I just personally came out of a vegan diet, and since I stopped to be on a vegan diet, I realized how much of the knowledge that these vegan YouTubers share is mostly just like marketing and has nothing to do with science. So I'm getting more and more skeptical. When somebody's not talking about the basics, I'm like, dude, it's probably a scam or marketing trick.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think to a point it is marketing and stuff, and there's always an enemy in nutrition because it's easier to just pick something and argue against it. And the thing is, when you pick something that is like outside of yourself, it's like if something happens to you in life and you don't take responsibility for it, or if you blame something else, it means that it's not your fault, and that means you don't have to take responsibility for it. So if you say, well, I'm overweight because I'm eating gluten, then you can say, well, I'm blaming gluten, so it's not my fault. So that means you don't have to take responsibility for it. You can just blame the gluten. Whereas you just say, well, I ate too much calories and I've eaten too much, and maybe I didn't know about it or I didn't understand, but I've obviously eaten too much food over the period of whatever over the last few years, and now I'm overweight, and it's up to me and only me to do this, and it's my fault. And that can be quite harsh. It's not like in a bad way, but if you don't take responsibility for it, that means you've relinquished the control over it. So it means you don't have to do anything about it. So I think that's one of the reasons as well. People like to blame things that's other than themselves, so that they don't have to take responsibility and they don't have to do anything, because everybody knows, well, not everybody, a lot of people are overweight, should I say, and it's just getting worse. It's especially in Western countries. I mean, health conscious people, it's a little bit different, but in general, most people know that they should eat less food, and most people understand that calories, they should cut down on calories probably. But most people are looking for this excuse. They're looking for sugar, they're looking for gluten, they're looking for saturated fats, they're looking for animal proteins, they're looking for, even people carnivore, they're looking at vegetables. You can pick anything, and people just look for something outside of themselves. And it's my opinion that people do this because they want a scapegoat, because when you have a scapegoat, you take the responsibility off yourself, and when you take the responsibility off yourself, it means you can't control it. So you can only control something if you take responsibility for it and say, okay, this is up to me.
Yeah.
So that's what I think personally. And of course, there is some marketing elements to that as well, because it's very difficult to sell. And Lane Norton says a lot. It's very difficult to sell, balanced approach and the diet. It's much easier to sell, well, let's have a carnivore thing, and I'll show you how to do the carnivore diet and like what to eat, or even more minutiae stuff like autophagy, which is really popular now. I'm seeing like a lot of people focusing on that, and every single video they put out on YouTube is like how to eat for autophagy. I mean, like autophagy increases through calorie deficit and through not eating. So how do you eat, or what to eat after you break a fast? Like, I mean, you eat anything breaks fast. You don't have to eat something special, but like this is what people want to focus on. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what it is. And even the ones that do kind of use science, I suppose, they look at like stuff that's either only one trial or very limited. And anybody looking at research kind of knows that like most of the stuff is not 100% definite. We need more research, because to do trials and studies, you need a lot of money. And unless it's going to benefit somebody, no one's going to put in the couple 100,000 or whatever it is to do a study. So it's really all about balance. So if you're like, we can always cherry pick something and say, that's gonna, this causes that, and look at this one particular study that was done on mice or rodents, and that's gonna affect it. But it's not always the case. So balanced approach is the way that I like it. So I don't think that any one particular approach is bad, but anything that really cuts out a lot of something for particular health reasons, I think that you need to kind of look twice at that. So not one particular food is gonna harm you necessarily in moderate consumption. Like overconsumption of anything could potentially harm you, but in moderate consumption, there's not actually something actively hurting your body. Maybe I would avoid stuff like maybe trans fats, man-made hydrogenated fats. But even at that, even a small amount of those is not going to affect you. Like, our bodies are quite resilient. Like, we're out in the world every day breathing in, car fumes. We're breathing in deodorant spray. We're breathing in, like, if you live in India, you smog in the air. There's lots of different chemicals and pollutants in the air that we breathe in all of the time. But then people worry about this very, very small amount, which, if mega dosed, may have some negative impact. And they look at it, break it down. Well, aspartame, it can
Yeah.
give leukemia to rats that have like something like 4 grams per kilogram, or I can't remember exactly what it was. But then, if they have this specific disease, I can't remember the name. It's called PYK, I think. And then people break it down and say, well, you can't put aspartame sweetener in your coffee because it's going to give you cancer. I mean,
Yeah.
just
Yeah, perfect summary. Yeah, totally. But I would also like to know, for us, let's say a guy right now is watching, he wants to get in shape, like he has exactly 3 months till summer, and he wants to lose as much body fat as possible in a long-term sustainable way. How
yeah.
would you approach that?
What you mean? He wants to lose it and then keep it off?
Keep it off, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you would have to go aggressive. So I don't really like people losing more than 1 to 2% of their body weight per week. Usually 1%, because then you start to have negative impact in terms of compliance. So, not that I'm afraid of muscle loss or anything like that. I think you can lose 2% of your body weight. So let's say you weigh 100 kilos, for example, just to make it simple. That that's 1 to 2 kilos per week. So kind of work. I don't really kind of use body fat percentages or goals. I just basically look at a time frame that person has, let's say 12 weeks, and say, if they just want to get like holiday lean or whatever, or quite lean but not like stage lean, then I would just say, well, let's just lose 1 to 2% of your body weight per week and see where we're at, instead of trying to say, let's try to get to 80 kilos or whatever, or 90 kilos, because you have no idea what you're going to look like when you get there, and it's just an arbitrary number. So I just keep dieting until you get there. And in that context, if you want to lose it as fast as possible, I mean, you're going to have to be more meticulous in terms of tracking. Like, people who do want to get the results very fast, that's the way I do it. So in that case, that's when I start using tools of tracking and tracking everything. That's just the fastest way to do it, because when I mentioned with the vegetables and fruit and not necessarily tracking all of them, that's good for overall health, and it will help with fat loss. And I've even done a good diet where I've got in quite good shape with not tracking at all, anything. But it takes longer and there's more margin for error. So that's fine if you don't have a specific date or period, or you just want to enjoy yourself and eat well. So with that approach, you're also trying to diet and learn how to eat well at the same time, versus when you're just in a calorie deficit, you're just trying to cut as fast as possible. I still would recommend getting in as much fruit and vegetables as you can, with the caveat that you must stay within that calorie deficit. I'd probably use some form of cardio as well, depending on the person's lifestyle. If they're extremely busy, I'll ask them, do you have time to do cardio? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, well then we're going to have to create a bigger calorie deficit. But then if somebody is repeatedly binging, so for me personally, it hasn't happened to me recently, but like when I've dieted down before, like 3 or 4 years ago, I was on quite a severe calorie deficit, and I just got really food focused. Like, just personally, that's just the way my body reacts. I just couldn't stop thinking of food, and I ended up binging a couple of times, where I'd eat a lot more. And like, obviously it's not something I wanted to do. I'd eat a lot more, binge, feel really bad about it, and then like, okay, I'll start again. I'll get back on to cutting, and then like a week later do the same thing, and it's like, that is a really bad cycle to get into, like, mentally. So the approach that works for me is that keep the food a little bit higher and then add in more activity and create the calorie deficit through that way. And that is an approach I'd also do with somebody who's like sitting a lot. So this time that I'm dieting, the way I'm personally doing it is I'm doing a lot more cardio and not putting the food down so low. And simply because the way that my body works is that when I start to create a calorie deficit, my body starts to conserve energy more efficiently. My body is more efficient than other people that I work with. So by more efficient, I mean that my body loses fat slower. So it kind of sounds counterintuitive, but your body doesn't want to lose fat. So more efficient meaning that I need less calories to survive. So as soon as I start to diet, my body just shuts down. Like my heat shuts down. My energy just gets lower. I don't move around as much. I'm not fidgeting as much. I tend to make these subconscious choices that conserve energy. So that means for me to be, even though I create technically the same calorie deficit, I'm actually losing more body fat, or I'm losing weight easier by adding in cardio. So it's not necessarily the same calorie deficit, but if I create a calorie deficit through, let's say, 300 calories through diet or 300 calories through cardio, I'll lose more fat through the cardio, because when I do it through diet, my body starts to reserve or conserve energy more because it knows there's less food coming in. So that's kind of considerations that I would take. I might do some so I would look at those things, how busy somebody is. If they can do some cardio, I probably wouldn't. If it's only 12 weeks and they need to lose a bit of fat, I'd probably add in at least three sessions of cardio. Probably just do like moderate intensity cardio. I personally don't like HIIT cardio, because it's quite intensive. I mean, it takes a lot out of people, and I don't feel like there's any superior fat loss benefits. So it's essentially like doing another workout, where it's low intensity. You can go for a walk or you can do whatever, and then I would maybe do a refeed once a week, depending on the person, kind of how their feedback is. And that's more just psychological thing. I don't really feel like they need it physiologically, especially if it's just for a holiday, not necessarily or it's 12-week cut. You don't necessarily really refeed, but it is something good to look forward to from a psychological aspect, just to eat some more food and increase calories, increase carbohydrates by 50% to maybe 75%. And that's the kind of the approach that I would take.
So just to be clear, you do a refeed once a week, right? Just like for psychological reasons, not like for physiological.
Yeah. So that's probably the approach that I would take. So it kind of depends on the person, but I mean, for just a standard 12-week diet for like get lean, general population lean, like maybe say 10% body fat with abs and stuff. Yeah, it would be just for psychological reasons. I don't think, like we said before, your metabolism can't really slow down a maximum to 15%. I think adding in some carbohydrates does increase your glycogen stores. Well, it does increase in glycogen stores. So you're going to have better performance then the next day in the gym, or the next 2 days, which can lead to better maintenance of strength, which could potentially mean more muscle maintenance. I think that aspect, or the effect on strength, will be very, very minimal, if any. But also then, if somebody does stall, you can get this kind of whoosh effect, or like a super compensation effect with the refeed. So kind of like I explained with the guy who's like sitting in the office and he eats more and he loses more. That same effect can happen with somebody who's like dieting for a long time. So you're dieting, your energy is down, you're on lower calories, you add in this refeed day, or maybe 2 refeed days, you have more energy because you eat more food, and ultimately that means that you're moving around more and you create a bigger deficit. You've also released or lowered, you've lowered your cortisol levels, because dieting is a stress. So your body sees more calories, lowers cortisol levels, and you could be holding onto water because of that higher cortisol, and it'll give you like a shedding off the water effect kind of. So, but that's more in the case of longer term. So I wouldn't really expect that to happen in somebody who's doing just like a 12-week diet. I wouldn't really expect fat loss to kind of stall really, if we're going quite aggressive. So that's kind of the approach. Yeah.
Would you also incorporate diet breaks then, or for some people not really?
Not for 12 weeks, no. I wouldn't incorporate 12 weeks. And even if it was a diet break, maybe it would just be like 2 days of refeed. I think a diet break is probably just kind of an extended refeed, I suppose. Like you can, I think any effects that are on like hunger or leptin levels seem to be pretty acute when you do any kind of refeeds or diet breaks, in the sense that they will be raised, but as soon as you go back to the diet, they'll be lowered again. So you're not going to have any like knock-on effects. So people will say, we'll do a refeed so you can increase leptin levels, and leptin being the hormone that kind of signals to your body how much body fat you have. So your body wants body fat. So when your leptin levels are low, basically your brain is telling your body, your body's telling your brain you have low amounts of body fat, so you're going to be hungrier, you're going to want to eat more food. So that will increase if you do a refeed, but as soon as you come off the refeed, it'll go back down. So, the whole idea of doing increased leptin levels is just, it doesn't really work,
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, interesting. So what I want to ask you also is, you mentioned your metabolism adapts really fast to a calorie deficit. Does it
Yeah.
work the other way around as well? When you increase your calories, you start to move more?
Personally, not really, I guess. Like, I don't actually, I never really noticed it, but what I do know is that I can't really eat like a ton of calories, or else I get fat. So I don't try and increase my calories a lot now at this stage in my kind of lifting career. Although I'm not like extremely huge, I think I'm close enough to genetic potential. I think I still like have a lot of way to go, like, a long time to go, but I'm not going to be gaining a couple pounds a month anymore.
What are your
Uh,
stats, by the way, for the people listening?
Um, well, I'm 6 foot or 5'11". So what's that? 180 centimeters. So
180. Yeah.
yeah, weight right now is this morning was 194. I actually had 3 days of refeeding, over the last few days, and so like it's up probably 2 pounds or so. So it's like 192, which I believe is probably around 88, 89 kilos.
Mm-hmm.
So around that, and body fat, I don't know. Could say anything.
Yeah.
Couldn't guess. I've got visible abs, but I also have visible abs. But I'm 18 weeks out from, or 19 weeks out from my competition. So I think I have about 18 pounds. If I lost 18 pounds, I'd be peeled, like very, very lean. I think I would probably lose about 15. That'll be where I'll be stage lean. So, I mean, I'm in a good position. So yeah, we'll go back to your question. Like, I can't really eat more than 3,500 calories personally, even though I'm quite heavy. So I just, when I do start to eat more than that, I get fat. So, but that, in saying that, I don't actually really track my calories that much when I'm in the off season, and the reason is because it's just more mental, mental kind of aspect. Like, you get so, you get so caught up in tracking that you can start to have this negative effect. And this is one thing about flexible dieting or tracking calories, is that people say, oh, it liberates you and you can eat more calorie, or you can be more flexible with your diet. You can have all these foods, and all the foods that are not clean. But then some people get so ingrained in the tracking that if they don't know what's in a certain food, or if they go to their friend's house or their grandparents' house and they cook them this nice homemade meal with good quality food, they won't eat it because they don't have to track it. So that's one of the big issues with tracking as well, is that people, well, oh, like, I don't know what's in that, so I have no idea how to track it, so I'll just eat my own food. And that's something that I've noticed with myself in the past, and also other people, is that the flexible dieting will work only if you weigh every single ounce of every ingredient that you put in, and if you don't know what's in it, you won't eat it because you can't track it. So I don't want to, like, long term, I'm not going to be tracking, but like personally, when I stop competing, if I ever do, or whatever, even in the off season, I find that just eat well, train for, like, I do track my weight every couple of days just to see, how it's doing. And I really focus on just keeping my body weight in a certain range, and then just, making sure that my training progress is going up. And then just, making sure that, like, because I've been tracking so long, like I've been tracking probably now at this stage for almost 10 years, I think, on and off. I know kind of, I can see, what I know what 180 to 220 grams of protein per day looks like. So, it's not like one day I'm going to eat like 50 grams of protein, and the next day I'll eat 400. I know so even though I say I don't track per se, I mean, I don't track it in an app, but mentally I have the subconscious, if I eat too much in the morning of a lot of fat or a lot of carbs or a lot of calories, maybe I'll tailor off in the evening, and vice versa, So that's the kind of approach that I take in the off season. But then when I do start to, like, when I want to diet down, I'll be more meticulous with the tracking. And like I said, like, I dieted down earlier this year, or last year, should I say. And I got pretty lean. I got leaner than I am now without tracking at all. But I was a lot more strict on what terms of the foods that I ate. I focused on certain things, like eating more just whole foods, and eating fewer meals, but making sure that I got enough protein. But then when I want to actually have when I'm doing competition prep and I really want to be precise, data doesn't lie. So it's very difficult to make a change or tweak in something when you don't know what the data is. So, like, if I wasn't tracking, but I felt like I was eating well and my weight got stuck, what would I do? Do more cardio, or like, what do I take? What do I do? So when you're tracking, it's just gives you that extra level of refinement so that you can track it. So that's why I do like tracking as a tool to help you kind of diet down, especially if you're going to be like, if you want to get really good levels of leanness. And in the future, if I want to just get lean, like, when I maintain a lean body weight, I won't really track. Probably I'll just do, instinctive eating, but, watch what I eat. But for competitions, it's definitely a useful tool. And when people, like, when I help people with their off seasons, or I won't say off seasons because I don't train much bodybuilders, but guys who want to build muscle, I won't necessarily get them tracking everything. I might get them to track protein and calories, or just have a range for carbohydrates and fats and say, like, stick within this range, and try not to go too much above it. And that will be, pretty good. And then for some of the more advanced people that I train, I'll just say, keep an eye on calories, keep an eye on body weight, and try hit around your protein targets. And then, body weight is obviously always going to be important, because you can gain 10 kilos and look fairly similar in the mirror if you don't have abs, like once your abs go, it's very difficult to see any changes in the mirror. So that's why I will always keep an eye on my body weights, and that'll kind of keep me, in check with the calories, and say, well, maybe I need to reduce calories a little bit here.
So I'm curious, what are your recommendations for like protein and fats, or perhaps, or like in general, do you have like specific macronutrient ratios you recommend to your clients?
Not ratios, because,
or like ranges. Sorry, I want to say ranges. Yeah, ranges.
Yeah. So usually I have ranges. So depending on the kind of goal, or the kind of level of knowledge and kind of previous tracking or nutritional kind of
background,
background, I would say I usually when people first start, I might just say, here's a calorie goal, try and stay within 20% of that. So if you've never been tracking anything at all, like, it's kind of difficult, or it's kind of eye-opening when you start tracking and ask them to stay within 20%. 20% is a huge range. I mean, it can be, if you're eating 2,000 calories, that can be, 1,800 to 220. It's just quite a big range. So that's like a 40% difference. And then I'll give them like a protein target and try hit within, like, 10 grams to 15 grams outside of that. And I usually recommend people around 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. If somebody has a lot of hunger and they're dieting and they consistently say, like, I'm really hungry, and they're not losing body fat, and because hunger is normal, but if someone's not losing weight and they're still hungry and they're eating enough fiber and they're eating enough vegetables, then I'll usually increase the protein. So protein is just not for the muscle building effects, but purely for satiety factors. And then with fats, I usually, it depends again on how much calories I think they can have. But usually maybe 0.5 gram per pound of body weight. So if someone's, 200 pounds, which is like 94 kilos, I'll give them like maybe 90 grams of fats.
But that's probably what you recommend for people, like, regarding fat?
I don't think there's a minimum, but what I've seen, because I never go extremely low, but what I've seen is something like 10% of your overall calories. You shouldn't really go below that, because you need your essential fatty acids. And then when you start to get into extremely low levels of fat, then you can start to have some issues with hormonals, production of hormones. But personally, I think from my experience, or at least what I've researched, is that usually your hormone production is related to overall calories rather than lower fats per se. So, if you're eating adequate calories and you're getting in essential fats and you're still eating very low fat, I think your hormones will be okay. But just purely from a overall compliance, enjoyment of the diet, and being able to be more flexible, I try and keep fats at least in moderate levels, because a lot of foods contain fat. So if you put really low fat in someone's diet, that means they're going to have to eat low fat everything, and they're going to have to be restrictive in terms of meats they can eat. You're not going to eat much eggs. They can't really eat much oily fish. So try and keep it moderate, and then I'll fill the other with carbs. Essentially, that's the way it works.
Awesome. Yeah, the thing I want to ask at the end of this podcast also is, a lot of people are asking me about supplements, basically. And there's a lot of stuff out there, and I think you recommend the same as me, more or less. So what's your basic stack of supplements you recommend to most of your clients?
Well, personally, I think, and it's something that I've only recently been doing or looking into, is that getting my blood work done to see
Mhm.
where I may be deficient, instead of just saying you recommend this supplement for the sake of it. So,
Okay.
but as a standard, I would say to everybody, a fish oil if you don't eat fish. So I don't eat fish that often, simply because I don't really like the taste of it. I mean, I ate it yesterday, but most of the time I don't like it. It smells a lot. So I'll take a fish oil supplement. I'll take 2 to 3 grams of combined EPA, DHA per day. So that's usually like super strength omega. And I'll have like 5 capsules or something like that per day. Vitamin D, I take around 2,000 to 5,000 IU per day. That's just definitely recommended to everybody. Most people, I recommend a multivitamin as well, just as cover as insurance policy. Um, just a basic multivitamin. Personally, then and then creatine for most people. I recommend creatine. It's just cheap. It's proven. It's effective, and that's pretty much all I would say. Like as a basic. So like if somebody's not taking any supplements, I recommend that. Then personally, I also take on a daily basis ashwagandha. I know that you take that as well.
Yeah.
And I actually upped my dose recently of that because after I got my blood work done and my DHEA levels were low, which is the precursor of testosterone. So, you have low DHEA, testosterone is going to be lower. And that's all often related to adrenal function, which can be compromised through, stresses, whether that's life stress, training stress. So, ashwagandha being an adaptogen can help with, reduction of that, but also other lifestyle factors like less training volume, just more mindfulness, trying to just reduce your, lifestyle stress. But so ashwagandha, I'm really liking it, and I've been taking it for a while. And when I did stop taking it, I felt like I noticed it a little bit. So I've been taking that. I have been using CBD oil. I know it's not an actual supplement, but I've been kind of experimenting with that more so than kind of like preaching that as everyone should take this before bed. It's hard to say it's conclusive whether I really, really like it or not. My sleep is quite good, but I'm also I take magnesium, a form of magnesium, which is something actually I recommend for a lot of people as well. Just a lot of people are deficient in it. I think it also helps with relaxation, more so of the mind. So it's a muscle relaxant, but also neuro relaxant. So, anybody that can't sleep at night because they think a lot about thoughts and stuff, it can help with that calming effect. So magnesium citrate is usually what I recommend, or anything but magnesium oxide. Um, yeah, and then I think that's pretty much it. Like I do take NAC, N-acetylcysteine, for the glutathione levels. It's not as effective as liposomal glutathione, but that can be extremely expensive, and it's probably not necessary. Like I don't want to go too much into the weeds in terms of that. And then I do take a greens product most of the time, again, just for that extra kind of phytonutrient boost. But I don't think it's any magic or absolutely necessary. And then I actually do kind of, sometimes I play with other supplements just as like hobby, I guess. Some stuff that have like minimal research but look promising. Like glycine. I've been taking glycine as a neurotransmitter before bed after I did that podcast with Greg Potter. So glycine anything that can improve blood flow to the brain could potentially help sleep. So I've been taking a bit of that, and it helps with sleep. And then L-theanine is something that I visit quite often to take the edge off coffee. Nice.
Always here.
Yeah, it takes the edge off coffee, I feel. And then anytime you kind of have a feeling of, on edge or anxious or anything like that, I feel like L-theanine just kind of
Yeah.
relaxes you a little bit. Again, I take that before bed as well. So I've been sleeping really, really well with that. And then that is pretty much it. I've tried some nootropics. I've tried a lot of nootropics, not much recently, simply because they're not. I don't feel like they're necessary, 100% necessary. Nor do I feel like they have a huge impact for the overall cost. And a lot of them are not researched long term. So I don't feel like I need them for anything in particular, like extra concentration or focus, and for any particular task. Maybe if I was studying, I would revisit those. But that's pretty much it for what I take for overall supplements.
Yeah, interesting. Like you mentioned magnesium also. Like I once had a magnesium deficiency 2 years ago, and it was like super weird. I had like also like neuronal problems, like my fingers were like twitching
Oh
before
yeah,
me
yeah,
doing anything, and I had
yeah.
like
So
cramps
people
and
who
stuff.
have that, my mother actually has it, where it's like restless leg syndrome, where you're in bed and you just feel like your leg, like you can't stop moving your leg. Just I've actually had it a few times, and I guess it's because as someone who trains a lot and exercises a lot and is under, you know, you use up a lot of magnesium, or if you drink alcohol, you oxidize a lot of magnesium.
Yeah.
So, I don't think anybody could go wrong with increasing their magnesium. And the only ill effect is if you have like way too much, you'll just have like GI disturbances like in your gut. You'll feel it. So you kind of know when you have
Hashtag
to.
diarrhea, yeah, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I've never had that, so I don't think you can go wrong with magnesium. So yeah, that's definitely something that I do recommend for most people, if not everybody.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had that as well because I ate so many plants. I had so many so much phytic acid in my diet. I was not able to get all the magnesium from my food. Like when I was putting in my food into chronometer, I had enough magnesium. I had like 0.5 gram a day, but I still had like a deficiency because of all the anti-nutrients. So especially for people that are eating a lot of plants, I can recommend like magnesium. Pretty good.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, just want to summarize your fat loss approach really quick because I realized I forgot to do it and we talked a lot about it. But you basically say for a 12-week diet, you would just approach it like a moderate calorie deficit, like 1% of body weight per week, which is still pretty big. But then once a week, you do like a refeed and you just like repeat that. And then as soon as you don't lose weight anymore, you would increase the calorie deficit by either more cardio or less calories, right?
Pretty much. However, it would depend on the person how much fat you got to lose. You might have to go faster if you really want to lose a lot of fat. That's the way to approach it. But also, like I said, I would still look at those lifestyle factors like your overall health, your digestion, certain foods that you eat,
Mm-hmm.
stress, like sleep. These things are extremely important. Like, looking at those first. Some of the stuff can be addressed very quickly. That like you don't need to. There's not a lot of interventions that needs to be done. It's like a matter of just looking at it and kind of addressing the obvious glaring issues, which I think would like lead to long-term success a lot faster, rather than just trying to immediately cut into calorie deficit. And it really depends kind of on the person and on their level of knowledge and tracking and everything as well. You don't want to throw everything at them once; it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the first things, like, I mean, it's very easy for somebody to lose fat who's motivated and who's like a bodybuilder, or who comes to me that says, they've lost fat before. But most of the time, a lot of people that at least come to me or want to work with me, they have identity problems. So it's not an issue of, oh, they don't know how to lose weight. Like, everybody knows that you create a calorie deficit. And in fact, calorie deficit is the only way you can lose body fat. You can't lose it any other way. It's just the law of thermodynamics. It's physics. It's just energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be converted from one form to another. So, you lose fat and it turns into like carbon dioxide, and, you excrete excess waste. But a lot of people have like identity issues where they have stories that they tell themselves that they can't lose weight, and then because they tell themselves the story, they sabotage subconsciously every time they do have success or they have limitations. And it's not like they don't know what a calorie deficit is, but like if you have a story that you're not in good shape, or you shouldn't be in good shape, or you can't be in good shape, you'll do everything you can subconsciously in your power to make yourself fail. That means going out drinking and eating junk shit and eating way too much food, or quitting, or like not checking in with your coach or whatever. You'll do everything in your power. And it's in the book, I think Psycho-Cybernetics, is that Psycho-Cybernetics, you cannot raise above your self-image of yourself. So if you don't think that you can actually achieve something, you won't achieve it, even if you know the path to achieve it. So I think that's one of the main things that I get to do. I do with people first before they even do any kind of dieting with me as well. But that's more of a long-term approach. If you have somebody who's like determined, and they're going to follow exactly what you say, they're the easiest people to work with. They're the people who lose, where you just say do this and they jump and they say how high, and it works, and that's the kind of approach that I would follow. But then with other people, it is really about the mindset, like because that's what's going to hold them back. It's the stopping. Why did you stop? This is the plan. Like, why did you stop? Like, have to look at that, the stories that they tell themselves, the identity that they have for themselves. I even worked with one guy before who was like 150 pounds, and he was 250 before. He lost 100 pounds, but he couldn't lose any more body fat, because he felt like he was still really fat. So he didn't want to go out in public because he felt like he was fat. I mean, this guy was like really light. He's like 40 pounds lighter than me, and he's like the same height. So he was like skinny, he's not fat at all. And it's just because the story that he had for himself of, this is the identity that he has. So it's about, and that's the whole thing what I'm doing, like the actions of getting people eating better, just, starting with the fruits and vegetables, because, every action that you do is basically a step towards the identity that you want to become. You can't just wake up tomorrow and just be like, I'm going to be fit now or healthy. You have to take, every action that you take is a vote for the person that you want to become, essentially. So if you want to become a healthier person, you have to, do these actions day after day after day. You don't wake up one day and you're just like an expert pianist or an expert guitarist. You do it every day, and you start off quite bad, and you do it over and over and over, and then you're all of a sudden you're a guitarist. You're like, he's the guitarist, I'm the guitarist, because you've done it all the time. So that's what you have to do. It's literally just repeating the small, mundane vegetables. Like the verb I like, or the phrase I like to use is like, eat your proverbial vegetables, because vegetables can be boring and tasteless and bland, but they're good for you. So you got to eat them. So that's the same, mentally, you got to eat your vegetables, eat them every day. And, after a while you'll get used to them, and long term they're going to have, payoff. So that's the kind of approach that,
yeah. So you teach your client to first like do the little things, like the vegetables, the sleep. I mean, the little things, the big things, basically. And then they have the self-image of like, oh, I'm the guy that sleeps, that eats healthy. But then they're automatically also the guy that loses weight then long term.
Yeah. So like I said, I've worked with clients who are, I have one of my clients is an IFBB pro. So he's a professional, bodybuilder. Well, he's actually a men's physique. So he competes, gets paid to compete if he wins, so you tell him what to do and he does it, but then I have other guys who are like, who've never been in good shape, and then they want to get in good shape. And when you look at their habits, they suck, so to speak. So in terms of their health. So the way that I look at it with them is that I try and get them to do the small things. So if you look at a 1% difference is not a lot. Like if you have a bad day of eating, it's not going to have much impact, or one bad meal is not going to have much of a bad impact, nor is one good meal is going to have much of a good impact like right now. But 1% increase every single day with the effect of compounding interest will equal 37x by the end of the year. So, that if that's $100, 1% every day is like, at the end of the year, that's not much. It's, $465. But if you add in compounding interest, it's $3,700. So that's the way that I kind of portray it, is that, just do the small things every single day. Just strive for 1% better. And then that's a vote for the person that you want to become. Like I didn't become a healthy and fit person overnight. I just started to do these things, and now I identify it. And when you identify as somebody who does that, then you start to make choices based off that identity. So, I'm not going to go on the way home. I'm not going to just randomly stop at Burger King and eat a double burger and a milkshake, because I don't identify. But somebody who identifies as like an overweight, kind of lazy, incompetent, just slob, like just someone who's just like going through the motions, they'll do that no problem. And then they'll be like, I don't know how to lose weight. And you're like, well, why did you do that on the way home? And I don't know, like I didn't think about it. They just, so you have to just put in these little things every single day. So that's the biggest thing, and that's the number one thing why a lot of people fail, is because the mindset and the identity and the story that they have for themselves, not the actual, this is the best way to diet, or this is, it doesn't matter. Like, I have a coach of mine, a business coach. His mentor is Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins said to him that, and if anybody doesn't know, Tony Robbins is like one of the kind of great motivational speakers. He just says like the people who get the best results are just the most consistent. It doesn't matter what approach they take. And he's not talking about fitness. He's just talking about anything. So if you're just consistent with any approach, it'll work. So if you want to do a ketogenic diet, if you want to be a vegan, if you want to be a carnivore, or you want to do anything, it'll all work. Even like the Weight Watchers or the Slimming Club things, they'll work if you just stick to it long term. The problem is that people can't. And it's not necessarily like, oh, well, it's because it's too rigid or whatever, because even people who understand flexible dieting and know how to calorie count and know if it fits your macros and how to eat foods that they like, they still can't lose fat. I mean, like, what the hell's going on there? That's not a problem of not knowing enough. It's a problem of, identity crisis. I won't say crisis, but I'll say a problem with their identity and the stories that they have for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I would say it's the perfect end for that podcast. like the most important thing at the end. So yeah, if people want to check you out, where can people contact you? What would be the best
Well, well, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is AdamMac192. It's ADAMMC 192. You can also look me up on YouTube. Just type in my name. I'm posting a bit more frequently there. I kind of had a bit of a break for a while, but in the last few months I'm posting more. I'm going to be documenting my prep, or I have at least started documenting my prep. And
Mac versus Mayhem, right?
yeah, it came from the Matt Ogus versus Mayhem.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because funny story, we're doing the same competition. I'm going to be doing the exact same competition. So hopefully I'll meet him out there. I've met him once actually, and we're also using the same kind of
He's
bodybuilding
also
coach.
competing.
He is?
He's also competing at the same day, you say?
No, he competed at the show in the past. So when he did the series, Matt versus Mayhem, it was because the show is called the Muscle Mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the show he did. So I called it Mac versus Mayhem because my name is Adam McDonald. So I thought it was just kind of a funny kind of way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can follow me there, or you can get me on Facebook. It's Adam McDonald as well. So that's probably the best place. Social media is probably the best place to get me. Yeah, I'm pretty
Awesome,
active on
yeah.
that.
All the links will be down below. So
Thanks, man.
something you want to add at the end? Something you need to add or want to add?
I think what I strive for, or what I think is, rather than saying like one piece of nutrition or training advice, I would just say to strive for 1% better every single day. 1% with that idea of compounding interest. That just don't stop every single day. You're gonna have days to go back, days to go forward, but if don't try and jump the gun on anything and try and look for the next best revolutionary thing, because ultimately there's not going to be one. So just strive for that 1% every single day, just push limits. And it's all about the stories that you tell yourself, is that's going to hold you back. Whatever story that you have yourself is what is going to be the actions that you take. So identity is a massive thing, what you believe you can achieve, and the story of who you are and what you can achieve is going to be ultimately the driver of the results that you get.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So also, yeah, check out Psycho-Cybernetics. For all of you guys watching, I'm going to put the book down below. And yeah, thanks, Adam. Thanks for the time. Thanks, guys, for watching. And I will see you next time.
Cheers, man.